Hey everyone, I wanted to do a special episode today because we're about to end out 2025, and it was a crazy year full of whiplash and all types of events. And if you've been following along so far, first of all, thank you. I really appreciate it. Without you, this would have been probably a pretty low key year for me, but it was a lot of fun because I got to connect with so many people and talk about a lot of things that I've been spending a lot of time trying to become an expert in. But since it's been 1 year, it's actually been close to the anniversary of the day that Escape the Clock was launched and released digitally. And that was a wild ride. It was a lot of fun working with a publisher and getting that book out. And to be honest, I am still getting used to being a financially independent person who works for himself. That part has honestly been really great because when you're waking up and you have something that you're excited to work on, be it a book or a podcast or meeting with somebody that you think you can help, that is just extremely rewarding. And that purpose can really keep you going. And plus, I've had time with my wonderful family, connecting with friends and working out and training dogs. And it's just been better than I would even hoped it would be. And so as we close out the year, I thought it would be great to share everything I've learned since starting this new chapter. Not all financial stuff, but there is a lot of that, of course. But since it's been 1 year since the book was digitally released, I've just so honored that the book won an American Writing Award for Best Personal Finance and Investing Book. That was a huge honor and something that I feel really just ended the year on such a high note for me, because when I wrote the book, it was to capture the knowledge I built over the years, mostly to have something I could give to my kids and to help the people that were asking me for it. But the best part of this year isn't all those certifications and accolades. Honestly, it's just been the feedback. And the judges on the American Writing Award, plus the other awards I got, they send notes. They actually give you like editorial content with it. And in this award, there was one piece that really jumped out to me, and I'll just quote it really fast. I'll put the full write-up in the show notes if anyone hasn't seen it yet. But the judge says, Rodgers vividly captures the stress and burnout of modern work life, framing financial independence not just as a financial goal, but as a pathway to emotional and mental liberation, making the book feel more like guidance from a trusted friend than a financial lecture. That's really great to hear that, because I poured everything I had into the writing, and I'm just so glad that it came across, because these feelings, they're very powerful fuel for liberating yourself out of the autopilot mode that so many of us find ourselves in, and to really get to that vibrant and independent life that we're all seeking. So before getting into my big tips and predictions, because I want to look back, I want to talk about the year, my learnings, and the big secrets that I was able to use to really get through it all, but also some predictions for next year. Before doing that, it's really worth to look back and celebrate milestones. Like I always say, it's about stopping and actually celebrating. If we're not doing that, then what is all of this for? So in 2025, so many amazing things happened. First, we celebrated my son's high school graduation, dropping him off at college. That was just a really amazing event. Next, I flew to Las Vegas to accept the Pencraft Best Book Award. That was fun. I got to meet all the other best authors and spend some time in Vegas and doing all the fun stuff that you might imagine you get to do to celebrate a big milestone like that. I also began writing 2 new books, a sci-fi book that is actually heading into its final phase right now for publication. There's the final art on the screen. And by the way, if you are listening to this, that's great, but there is a special YouTube video that you can go watch, and you can actually see some of the graphics and stuff that I prepared for this episode, including the art to my new book, Kill Switch. I also have a follow-up to Escape the Clock started, where I'm going to go much, much deeper into some of the more advanced things that I've learned, including advanced stock optioning and things like that a lot of people have been really interested in. And those are that's another big milestone, to be honest. I deepened my mastery of stock options. It was a huge year for me on that. I did very well with stock optioning, and I actually feel like I have a good command of that at this point. I expanded the diversification of my portfolio. I now finally own additional real estate, so I don't have just my primary residence. I started a tiny business. I have an LLC. I also began volunteer teaching financial literacy to young people in my state. And I've done quite a few number of classes now, which has been a lot of fun through this nonprofit, Financial Beginnings. We started dog fostering. There's just a lot of need to adopt and foster dogs within my state. And we were helping dogs find homes, and we actually even kept one of those dogs ourselves, offering this cute little guy, Cabo, into our home. So that was a really great milestone as well. I completed more than 24 one-on-one consultations, free consultations to help people get their plan going. I was so happy that I was able to do that and help people get their plan started. I completed 2 classes in my degree to become a certified wealth management professional, and I have 1 left to go. So hopefully that will be in a couple months here. I also completely overhauled the Escape the Clock website. And so I have a background as a web developer, not quite a designer, doing my best there. But as a developer, I'm very comfortable going in and doing web programming. And so it's been a lot of fun getting the website into a great place because there's been a lot of traffic there. And so I've been really happy about the pages being where I want them to be at this point. And speaking of traffic, the Escape the Clock Smart Planner broke 1,000 downloads. And that makes me very happy because I made that smart planner to help people. That tool, honestly, I feel is one of the most valuable things I can contribute because I put a lot of work in getting that tool where it was. It did so much for me. And now that I know it's in the hands of so many people, that just feels great. And of course, I launched the podcast. I'm not even a year through with the podcast. I've been able to release it every single week with a couple special episodes like this here and there. But that just gives me so much to celebrate. And next year, honestly, I plan to do a lot more. So in this episode, I'm going to share with you 5 big secrets I learned during this year of action. These are the lessons that'll help you as you think about how crazy next year could be, even if it happens to be worse than this one was. But before we do that, let's recap all the big events that happened this year because we need that context so that we can talk about those learnings and dive into those secrets. And then we'll get into it with some predictions in just a moment. So before we go back and look at the big learnings and touch on those big secrets and predictions, I think it's good, like with any plan, we talk about the context so we can get the details right. Because we can't make a great plan in a vacuum, as I've talked about so many times on the show before. So in 2024, I would describe as the year of the pivot. There were definitely some changes that were happening in that year. But if it was the pivot, then 2025 was the year of whiplash. There were so many jarring and abrupt changes that you couldn't help but feel that whiplash throughout the year. And so I want to touch on some of those big events now so that we can have some of the context so I can talk about some of the things that I learned that really helped me weather these storms and honestly feel more prepared for next year. So first, I'm gonna, if you're listening to this, that's great. You'll be able to get all the content, but on YouTube, you will be able to see some of these graphics here. Note, some of these are AI generated using Gemini. So thank you, Google, for the AI generation. And that's just so that I could quickly have some content for this special episode today. First, I want to talk about how the stock market hit all-time highs, fueled mostly by this massive AI exuberance. And that had many of us in the financial world scratching our heads. What is going on? All the signals pointed towards recession and downfalls, yet trillions in corporate spending pushed the S&P 500 to record levels, even though all those other indicators suggested that we should have been in a recession. And it created incredible highs, but with those highs was brutal swings. And like many of you, I watched my own portfolio take a hit back in April, and it was a loud reminder of the importance of diversification as the main defense to these bleeding out events. For me, I had already had a plan on how I was going to diversify. I was moving into real estate, and I had some commodities and international, but I hadn't been able to get there fast enough. So I definitely took a big, punch in the gut during that time. Luckily, it recovered and whatnot, and I've made some more moves since then. But it is just a reminder that when you balance growth with things like, REITs and tips and international assets and commodities like gold, that these tariff rumors and things like that, these become trickle events rather than a flood. The next thing was on the home front. The consumer price index told us that inflation cooled to 2.7%. But we know, if anyone who buys their own groceries knows, that that is not what it felt like at all. You see it on their store receipts because it says something very different than a smaller amount of inflation. And the power of your saved dollars, it becomes diluted. And this is what makes the effort of saving sometimes feel like this fruitless endeavor, especially if you're not really paying attention. And we saw all that immense pressure on the Fed to cut rates. I mean, it was loud and clear what the president wanted to happen there. And at best, though, an interest rate cut is a short-term stimulus, followed by very long-term inflationary pain. And to his credit, Chairman Powell held back, though some of these late year cuts and these very dire warnings that we're hearing about 2026 do have many of us on edge. Worse yet, though, we saw that the administration began hiding the very data we need to make decisions. This caused me quite the concern, to be honest, because when job numbers and quarterly earnings reports become opaque, when we can't really see that data, then we lose. And it's no surprise that gold is hitting all-time highs. Like many of us know, it's a cornerstone strategy, and it has been for me this year as well. And I'll continue to lean into things like gold as the US dollar faces these headwinds. On the employment side, the employment market entered a low hiring, low firing freeze, which is quite interesting to see. And anyone who has either been laid off or just been trying to find a new job knows exactly what I'm talking about. Unemployment rate crept to 4.6%, but nobody wanted to move or felt like they could move. In tech, if you worked in AI, you might have found yourself getting poached for some obscene salary. That was an exception. Sadly, others in that industry have been facing layoff or stagnation. And at the same time, we saw a push to return to a more industrial widget making era, which honestly doesn't make a lot of sense. And that could mostly because the technology has simply just moved past it. But this creates a friction. And honestly, that friction is where so much of this whiplash lives. In the crypto space, we saw a meteoric rise that felt like 2021 all over again. But then it was followed by a massive end of year correction that wiped out all of those late arrivals. So if you ended up buying in earlier in the year, I'm sorry. That's a painful time to start to put crypto in your portfolio. Crypto's also started to move and lose its appeal as this federally unregulated hedge to the stock market, because it's now starting to move with the stock market, but not necessarily like a broad index fund. It's starting to move more like a high volatile tech stock. And it remains the ultimate volatility test for anyone who is trying to invest in this. Now, I'm not saying crypto is the worst thing in the world. I'm just saying it has been a major source of whiplash for many of us this year. Then there's real estate. The market really did stay stagnated. There was some modest increases in mortgage rates, around 7%. But what we have is a lot of quote unquote stuck houses with low interest rates and just minor price appreciations. I think it's between 2 to 4% in home value appreciation. And what that means is the affordability issues continue with this generational lockout that is causing real pain for young families. We even saw this 50-year mortgage crap pitched as a solution. And let me be clear, like that is a hoax. That is not a real solution for anyone. That would only contribute to keeping someone in a lifetime of debt. And I have a whole write-up in my newsletter that talks about that in detail if you need some more information on that. So see that Insights article if you're interested. Okay, those were some of the big events for the year. That's my kind of financial freedom or financial independence filtered version of 2025 for you. If you are waiting for the quote unquote perfect time to escape the clock, then you're probably still waiting. But what I can definitely tell you is there is no perfect time. There is only your time. And that's what this is really about. So know your numbers, define your enough, and then start to try to make the moves on your terms while you still have the time to enjoy it. So let's get into the big secrets now. I talked about the context. That's great. But 2025 taught me some great things this year. And it really was an interesting year of all types of things, learnings with a lot of challenges. So first, I want to talk about stock options, because this is really can be your best friend when the market's moving sideways, which is what I saw a lot this year. And with high volatility means high premiums. And anyone who understands how to do optioning well is going to profit from that. And I spent the year deepening my mastery of selling puts and calls. And in a bull run, I was able to generate extra income on stocks I already wanted to own. And when we were seeing some of these bear-like dips, especially in the summer, a lot of these strategies were really shining for me. And while others were finding like panic selling was where their go-to, I found I was actually selling insurance to the panic sellers, collecting those premiums and lowering my cost basis while doing it. And this resulted in a 0% withdrawal rate for me this year. Now, I'm not bragging. I'm just pointing out that stock optioning can be a powerful technique if it meets your risk profile and it's something you take the time to really understand. And it does depend on market conditions. So you kind of have to understand and adapt a strategy depending on what the market's doing. But if you treat it, and I do see this quite often, and it really worries me, but if you are treating optioning like a casino in 2025, then I know you lost money. And my suggestion is just stop. Options are a tool for cash flow. It is not a get rich quick scheme. It's just not. My next book is going to focus mostly on this in a program FI lens to make an intentional option strategies as a source of consistent cash flow, something that can be a real part of your tool belt without it feeling like a gamble. The second thing I want to touch on is this year I sold off some major capital gains to free up some trapped equity and move into the physical real estate market. So in my case, I had a lot of tech stock because I worked in tech, and you might have equity from a job that you work in. And eventually, if you see gains in that, you're going to realize gains and pay those taxes. And that can hurt. Now, in my situation, I can do tax gain harvesting and try to minimize or eliminate the taxes I pay. But, for me to diversify as fast as I want to, I'm going to have to be willing to pay some taxes. And that's what I ended up seeing this year. And look, it hurts to pay taxes. But that equity wasn't generating any cash outside of the options premiums I could get for it. And I definitely am going to be keeping plenty of it for optioning, don't get me wrong, but moving it into what it's in now, which is a rented out condo, that's generating me thousands of dollars a month. And that's providing passive income. And later it will be a place for my son to live rent free for his final couple years of college. So it's kind of serving two purposes for me here. It's part of a 529 plan and it's part of a passive income plan. And yes, I'm moving something that was kind of illiquid, stuck in equity I didn't want to realize, into another illiquid thing, which is a condo. But that rental money, that is the passive income that is so important. So by moving from a volatile stock into a physical asset, what I did is I traded the potential for the security. The money is still illiquid, but I do have that generated cash. Plus later, I might sell it for some more gains, or I can do this thing called a 1031 exchange, or maybe I'll move it into an opportunity zone to optimize capital gains even further. So there's all kinds of strategies, and I'll continue to touch those on the show in the future. The next thing I want to talk about is more of a non-financial thing and more of a life thing I learned throughout the year. And I really put the 10,000 hour rule to the test. Anyone who's not familiar with it, it's this idea that you can spend enough time at something to master it. And for me, it was billiards. I like to play competitively, but I'm pretty terrible because I have a hypermobility syndrome and I just, had a bunch of things I had to unteach myself. So I was able to get a table in my home, and I had the time, and I dedicated myself to at least an hour a day, every single day. And because I have hypermobility syndrome, it does make shooting consistently difficult. So I had to adapt pro techniques that worked for my body. And I am happy to say it worked. 2 separate sessions this year, I ended as MVP for my skill range. I started a team that I captained, and we finished first place, and we've taken multiple awards. So it's really working, and that feels great. But here's the secret. It's not just that, hey, go find 10,000 hours and you can be the master of whatever you want. Maybe that's true, but it's that the practice itself didn't make perfection for me. Practice makes permanent, not perfect. And that was a big aha for me, because I was doing a lot of things the wrong way. And when you do that, all you're doing is you're building a bad muscle memory. And what I noticed is when I would be in a pool competition or a tournament, that you result to that when you're under pressure. And then I ended up having bad outcomes. So for me, I had to kind of unteach myself some things and get back to some fundamentals and, really build up those good habits. And if you're building, let's put this in the money thing for 1 second. I know it's a finance podcast. Let's say you're building the habit of using high interest credit cards, or you save, but it's always in a low interest savings account. Well, that is practicing, but practicing the wrong thing. So if you make a resolution to yourself this year to change some habits in a good way, try moving to that high yield savings account finally. Just make that a resolution for yourself, or start your Roth conversions, or, freeze that credit card, whatever it is, because when you start practicing those good habits, all you're doing is making it easier for yourself to do it again later. Secret number 4. And this one surprised me, to be honest, but I realized that giving, the act of giving and donating, isn't something you do after you become rich. It's just something you do anytime you have the intention to do it. So this is the year I truly broke my scarcity loop. I stopped worrying about this not having enough complex that was really trapping me in my life. And I realized that giving is a high utility spending. And so there's 3 ways to handle our money, right? We can spend it, we can save it, we can give it. I struggled with the spending, and I realized that giving was its own form of spending, high utility spending for me. And so I volunteered with the nonprofit Financial Beginnings to teach financial literacy within Washington State. I joined a dog rescue and brought in some new pups into the home and light into my family and into other people's lives as well. I gave my time to my friends. I was giving even cash out. I was trying to do anything I could to better those around me. And that truly felt like I was giving for the right way for the first time in my life. And look, like many of you, I would donate every year. I'd do all this stuff, but it never really felt like I was really doing it for the right reasons. I do it sometimes because there was a tax reason, sometimes because there's pressure to do it, sometimes because it's something I care about, but it felt so distant. Now that I'm doing it with the intention of actually trying to better something and see that better, it actually feels really good. And I can actually say that the scarcity mindset has finally been defeated. Secret number 5, and this one was another big surprise learning for me, and honestly, maybe the most dangerous lesson, is that even though I escaped the clock, my time is 100% liquid. And what I mean by that is that it's fluid how we spend that currency of time. And I learned that this liquid time, it spills very easily. It's terrifyingly easy to give your day away to distractions or overcommitments. When the job is done, unless you change these behaviors, you will find yourself with not enough time in the day. I never expected that. I thought I'd have all the time in the world. But our time, it remains our only non-renewable resource. So my big learning there was to be a little bit more protective and with my time. And yes, I want to do all these things, but I'm going to focus on not overreaching and overcommitting. Okay, the world is going to keep throwing whiplash at us, especially as we go into 2026. And look, the news is going to stay scary. The market's going to stay weird. But if you have a program, a baseline, a system, then you're not reacting. You're planned to execute. So just execute. And whatever chaos comes your way, you'll just be able to mitigate and move your way through it. So stick around. After this short break, I'm going to share my big predictions for 2026 in just a moment. Before we wrap up, I want to quickly thank you for joining me on this journey, because a lot of people claim that the path to early retirement is this lonely one. But I honestly have never felt that. Having this community, having these reconnections with my family and my friends, I've just felt more connected than ever. So thank you for that. And like you, I do have my own goals for 2026. I doubt the year is going to be a boring one in any way. And my philosophy, it just remains the same though. It's to hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And a lot of 2025 was dominated by this fear that will continue on into 2026, which is this fear of the AI bubble or the economy slipping in to where all the signals say it should be. So I want to quickly touch on that, because having worked on AI infrastructure myself, I can tell you that this is not just a trend. This is a shift as significant as the invention of the internet or the printing press. We are moving toward a milestone called AGI, artificial general intelligence. So imagine a system that doesn't just predict text, but can actually perform any task a human can. It can outthink the most brilliant professor or a seasoned engineer. And beyond that, there's another frontier coming called ASI, or superintelligence. So superintelligent AI. This is the singularity. This is the point where the single system surpasses the collective intelligence of all of humanity. This is where the system can solve problems we haven't even learned how to articulate yet. It's a source of science fiction. I know that's what you're probably thinking. And it's natural to feel unease when we talk about these things. And the technology, it's being developed by corporations, and they're in this race with these high stakes. And history shows us that when companies compete for dominance, altruism and guardrails and things like that, these things get sacrificed. So in the most optimistic future that I can imagine, I can see a world where AI starts to solve diseases that have plagued us for centuries. And we can see a world where manual labor becomes optional, because we might finally have something like a universal basic income, which allow people to focus on creativity and community. Basically get our time back because of these tools. We're fighting for connection, not for survival. But if we don't get it right, which is possible, it very much is, we should definitely fight to get this right, we might actually find ourselves in a weaponized information age where deepfakes and algorithmic division makes it harder than ever to find the truth. I mean, we're already kind of there. We see the way that information can be used. It has for human history been used as propaganda and things like that. Imagine when it's too hard to even know the thing that you're seeing. Is it real? What is a fact? It could get much more difficult. So you might be asking yourself right now, Dan, what does this have to do with my retirement plan? Why are you even talking about this? And look, you're right, but it kind of has everything to do with it. If the nature of work is changing, your relationship with the clock has to change too. Okay, let's say it like this. If AI is a tool that makes your freedom easy to manage, that's great. But if it's a tool that is a threat to the way we work, to the way we make money, the way we spend money, the way we live our lives, then if it's a threat to that, then that matters too. We have to adapt either way. So I'm really fascinated by this question, so much so that my new piece of fiction was written about this. It's a speculative fiction that really asks the moral question, but it does it in a very narrative and fun way. And look, because I worked in this, it's really full of a lot of these like scientific concepts and things like that. But it's a journey I think that's really fun to go on. I think this is the right time to go about it. And I'll talk more about that as we get early in next year, after it gets through the final phases of editing and publication. But beyond that book, I've lined up a slate of guests for the podcast who are leaders in their fields for next year. I'm so excited and honestly humbled by some of the guests that are saying that they're going to come on my show. And these are some of the biggest names yet. And I'm committed to fleshing out topics like this with them to help you get the best plan you can possibly have. That is my commitment to you, is to get you the education and the content so you can decide what works and what doesn't work. So follow along. I'm sure you'll be on your glide path to leaving the 9 to 5 on your terms before you know it. As always, before I go, I want to hear from you. What is the one move you are determined to make in 2026? Share your answer in the comments or send me an email at contact@escapetheclock.com. Thank you so much for listening to this special episode. I wish you the very best of luck in executing your 2026 plan and escaping the clock. I'll see you next time.